introduce myself. My name is Nancy Chakabuda, and I'm a subcommittee member in the Professional Development Portfolio. On the call, we also have some of our subcommittee members, and of course, the head of our subcommittee, who is Tumi, who will be our MC for today. And then I just want to welcome all of you to the session. We truly hope that you'll find it fruitful and that it's time well spent. I know a lot of you are on edge with your final exam coming up, but just know that the fact that you've come this far is just a clear sign that CASA is indeed meant to be yours. So today we have great introspections from a lecturer, marker, and two past candidates. And on that note, I just want to welcome our guests today, who have taken their Saturday off to come and give the APC candidates some great tips and takeaways in preparation for the exams. Our esteemed facilitator, Tumi, will take us through their profiles in a bit. And lastly, I just want to take the opportunity to talk briefly about AWCA and what we're about. Many of you know that the AWCA is a non-profit organization, and it's a platform for promoting the advancement of Black female chartered accountants. So at AWCA, we have a three-tier strategy, which is identify, which is targeted to the aspiring young female CAs by enabling them or supporting them through their university studies. This is where we really have the bursary programs and the AWCA student chapters. And then secondly is nurture, which is targeted towards those in their training contracts or newly qualified CAs as they prepare for the next step of their journey. And this is where us as the Professional Development Subcommittee play a part with events such as this, our APC workshops and our ITC preparation workshops. Then lastly, we've got lead, which is to develop African CAs to groom them for that boardroom or key decision-making roles in South Africa. And this is where we have events such as our roundtable series and our Celebrate Success events. As young prospective or current CAs, you can benefit by being a member of the AWCA. We have various membership streams and fees, and it just really opens you up to a network of mentors, prospective employees, like-minded CAs, ambitious professionals, and a lot of enabling and networking events. So it's something that I would highly encourage, just to be part of this great organization. And it's only through membership, memberships that we can continue to have this excellent events like this that benefit our CA community. And if you've got any questions on memberships, if you want to learn a lot more about our organization, we have, we've got a page, we've got LinkedIn, we've got Instagram, Twitter, as well as Facebook. So feel free to go and follow those pages, learn more about us, and click the join button as members of the AWCA. So I know everyone is ready with a coffee and notepad. So without further ado, I'll just hand over to Tumi, who will be our MC today, and Tumi, to go through the agenda.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for that introduction. Welcome to everybody. For those of you who are not familiar with my face, here it is, and you can see me. Nancy, once again, congratulations to Nancy for her win in the SICA Top 35 Under 35 of 2020 in the lead category. So we're very excited that she was able to be with us this morning and have her open really, really nicely for us. And I think it fits in quite nicely with what the AWCA is all about. Today's program is not going to be a very long program. If you've heard from those who've attended our APC workshops in previous years, I mean, we used to spend the whole morning and some of the afternoon with the candidates as well. And because of the COVID restrictions, I mean, we still decided to keep it virtual. So I'm quite excited that we've got quite a high number of attendees this morning to run you through. We are on Zoom, the Zoom platform, but please, for those of you who whose colleagues and friends and fellow candidates aren't able to participate on the Zoom due to space restrictions, we are also on the My AWCA page, which is on Facebook, which is also live. So we'll be using those two platforms to collect your questions as well as we go through this morning's session. So thank you for being with us once again, and I hope everybody, like Nancy said, has got their coffee and their notepads ready as well. I'm very excited for this year's panelists and speakers as well. We've got Ferdinand Mokete, who is a lecturer from the Endunamoo School of Accounting, and I know that they're quite they've been making strides this year in offering expanding their service offerings to APC preparatory candidates as well. So I think it's going to be really nice to hear Ferdinand's insights on some tips and some strategies, and the questions that you guys might want to have answered as well, considering that we had polled the respondents and we'd asked you guys, what is your mindset like? What are you looking for out of this workshop, considering that you've put in all this effort throughout the year, and now we're in the last hurdle. There's a couple of days to go before the pre-release, and then another few days or weeks to go before you actually sit down and give the best of your labor and your efforts that have culminated in this point in time. So Ferdinand's going to give us his insights as well, and from a lecturer's perspective, which is quite important. I'm hoping that there are going to be some robust interactions as well, but I'm also hoping that we are going to be able to lead through with some of the questions, having known that you've already had some of those questions answered throughout the year. So this should just be that final recap, and to make sure that you've cemented all the knowledge and you've cemented the technique in your heads as well. And you obviously going to get a little bit of motivation throughout the session. Then after Ferdinand, we also have Ms. Desiree Maseko. Desiree is an experienced APC marker, so she's going to be providing her insights from a marker's perspective, that when they actually look at what has been written and what has been presented, how is it that markers actually get to the point of assessing whether a candidate is competent, and how do you make sure that you get to that point where you move from not competent to the different levels, and with the aim of marking as yourself as being competent. So it's going to be really nice to hear that perspective as well, and what markers look for, and what it is that candidates should and should not be doing when they're putting pen to paper, or the different formats of tabulating their answers after the pre-release. Then in our last segment, we're going to have a few words from Ashley, Arnadu, and Nhyira, Asante, who are going to provide us with their insights on how it is, they've experienced their writing in the past of the papers. They're fresh candidates as well, so they've been exactly where you have been. So their perspective is going to be quite important in providing some motivation as well, and you can identify and relate with Ashley and Nhyira, because I mean they've recently written. Nancy and I wrote our board exams a long time ago, even before it was called ITC and APC. And as for Ferdinand, I'm sure it was also quite a few moons ago. So it's important that you are going to be able to relate to the people that are going to be sharing their time and sharing their knowledge with you guys. And I really hope that you derive as much as you can out of this session. So without further ado, oh yes, I'm alerted that we had quite a few participants on Facebook as well. But for those of you who are on the Zoom platform, I think you can also answer on Facebook. I just wanted to get a sense of where everybody is joining us from. Ferdinand, sorry, just before you start with your segment, I just wanted to get a quick poll and get a sense of where everybody's joining us from this morning. I know it's nice and virtual. I'm sure that there are other provinces as well that are on. I know that one of our APC subcommittee members from the KZN region is also logged on now. So I just wanted to check if anybody else from any other provinces has logged in and if they've joined us. Z, are you able to put up the poll? Oh, I don't see a poll. Oh, okay. Okay, I wanted the poll to come up, but I don't see it coming up now. We just wanted to ask the polling question, but that's all right. Ferdinand, I'll just hand over to you then. Please, by all means, let me not interrupt you.
I think he's probably having some network issues. He's dropped off to me.
Oh, goodness gracious me. Let's just see if he's able to get back on. Apologies for that. Yeah, and I also see that our host also logged off. So let's just give it a few minutes, guys. Apologies for that. I think there's some network issues. And then Ferdinand will be projecting his presentation shortly. Please feel free as we go through the session to use the question and answer box to type up any questions, as well as if you've got any comments, if there are any technical issues, or if you can't hear us properly, please do put that into the chat box that we will be able to attend to any issues that are there while we wait for Ferdy. And I think we can also take questions on the Facebook My AWCA page while we wait for Ferdy to just log back on again.
Okay, I see Ferdinand is back now to me.
Hi, Ferdinand, are you back with us?
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
we can hear you,
great.
but we can't see you.
I don't know what happened, but I'm back. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
To me,
we were about to tell you to go home, but you're home already.
Okay. Nice, nice. Can you see me now? Good.
Perfect.
Great. No, thank you so much, Tumi and Nancy. Thanks a lot for your great introduction. Quite excited on this cloudy morning to be with the AWCA members, and I'm so proud for all the work that you do for the profession and for the society in general. From Endunamoo, we just want to thank you guys for the opportunity that you've given us to just walk the journey with some of the upcoming APC successful candidates in April. I know we'll be congratulating all of those that are listening to this webcast this morning. Guys, as Tumi has said, my name is Ferdinand Mokete. I am a lecturer or facilitator rather, that's how I like to refer to it, on the Endunamoo APC Professional Program course. And yes, I think today or this morning, I'm going to be sharing some of the insights, some of the highlights of the journey that I've walked through with some of our candidates, just to share the love and just to indicate exactly how one goes about preparing for an APC assessment, and also just some of the last minute tips. And I encourage every single one of you guys just to keep it as interactive, and in terms of questions, just keep them coming. Keep Tumi very busy on the chat, and then she will be fielding them to me. All right, so I think I'm gonna kick off, and as I kick off, I will be going through my slides. I don't have a lot of slides because I just want to share some of the knowledge and some of the insights from the work and some of the surveys that you've indicated that you would like to hear my views around. Okay, but the first one that I want to talk to you about is in respect of a CA. And I just want every one of us to reflect on what a chartered accountant in South Africa means, because this is a very well-respected profession globally, and they capture it in the Pathway 2025. SAICA has actually captured as to say, ultimately, this is a responsible leader in business. A responsible leader in business. And APC is actually a final assessment of competence before we say you are a responsible leader in business. I just want us to actually just pause on that and think about that. It's quite a responsibility to be referred to as a responsible leader in business. And I just want every single one of you guys to really then, after thinking about that, give it the necessary priority, attention, and seriousness that it deserves. It means, what does it mean actually to be a responsible leader in business? It means you've got to be exercising good judgment. Exercising good judgment at all times, not sometimes, but at all times. So this is something that I wanted every one of you guys to really just think about as you walk through the next 10 days or so in your journey of final assessment of competence. You need to go and demonstrate versatile skill set, to demonstrate that you've got different skill sets. You are diverse and you can actually be adaptable in any sphere, it be a government sphere, a private sphere, any public sphere, but you can actually do amazing work in any of those areas. In any industry, in any sector whatsoever, you are versatile. You are adaptable. And like I said, we are globally recognized. We are a globally recognized profession, and the designation offers great mobility in terms of you can be going or you can be plucked in any country and you will do extremely well. Lastly, you will be a respected, high-performing, forward-thinking, creative, and adding long-term value. So that, all that is what is expected of you at the end of your 3 years of training, including after passing this assessment of competence. Guys, I think that with that foundation, I think we just know that actually, if we want to be chartered accountants, you've got to really think hard about it. Do I really want to be someone who's respected, who's highly performing, who's forward thinking, who's adding value at all times? who's globally recognized, who's versatile, who can add value in all areas, who's a responsible citizen, who's got citizenship in themselves. And that is someone that's going to be a responsible leader in business. Guys, clearly there is a lot of work that we've done, and there is a lot of work that is expected of us in this 10 to 12 days that is coming and beyond, because being a responsible leader in business does not mean you attain and you leave it there. No, you attain, maintain, and keep exceeding those expectations. So it's a serious investment in your human capital. And if you want to invest in yourself, you are on the right journey and you're on the right platform this morning. What is this APC trying to assess? Remember, ultimately, APC, the assessment is trying to evaluate if you will be able to be a custodian of that responsible leader. But being a custodian of a responsible leader, there are a number of skills, like number of skill sets that I talked about, that because you are versatile, there are a number of values, attitudes, and it's all what we call competencies. They are assessing competencies. And what are those competencies that are being assessed? You are being assessed on your professional values. First and foremost, your professional values. What are we talking about? Are you an ethical leader? Do you demonstrate ethical leadership? What about your citizenship? Do you care? Do you add value? Okay, so those are some of the professional values and attitudes that I'm talking about. That do come through, and I'm sure Desiree will be talking to it in terms of how they are able to pick up whether you are able to add value, whether you are demonstrating ethical leadership, whether you are actually you are a caring person. Okay, you've got professional citizenship. They are able to pick those through the marking process. We also are evaluating what we call enabling competencies. These enabling competencies are the competencies that actually gets you going on a daily basis as a responsible leader. Think about emotional intelligence. Think about emotional display. Think about digital acumen. Think about business acumen. Can you able to tell if this business is doing well or not doing well? What makes this business tick and what makes this one not tick? Okay, and how's your writing? How does it look like? Okay, so those are some of your enabling competencies. And I just also, lastly, the third one, which there is a myth out there that APC is not an assessment of technical competence. Absolutely correct. APC is not purely an assessment of technical competence, but technical competence is a foundation that makes or enables us to actually put together the case study and assess your professional values, your attitudes, and your enabling competencies. So it does make a bigger component of the case study and of the assessment, this being technical competence. So technical competence is being assessed, but it's a given that you'll actually do extremely well in it because you've gone through your 4-year degree, including your postgraduate diploma in accounting. You've set for ITC and you've demonstrated technical competence in those. So as a result, this should not be a new assessment. And given the fact that you've got 5 days to pre-research any of the technical triggers that are being flagged, it should not be a problem for you to demonstrate technical competence. But the question is, how do you then go and demonstrate your professional values and attitudes and your enabling competencies as part and parcel of demonstrating technical competence, which is a given. Okay? Guys, you can only do this if you walk into that assessment with the mindset that you are not going to narrow into one area, but you're going to open your mind up and demonstrate integrated thinking. You can see integrated thinking is at the center of my slide, demonstrating that you need to pull together professional values and attitudes. You need to pull technical competencies, and you need to pull or demonstrate enabling competencies. All of those needs to be demonstrated in every single task, that is being required in the assessment of professional competence. Okay. I just want to use some examples actually, just to actually trigger your mind in terms of enabling competencies and professional values and attitudes. And I want us to actually look at this little example because it will get us going. It will get us going, definitely. If I read from the top, just give me a second. I just want to read it from the top. Cool. So it's an example of an email. So a candidate wrote an email to Sean. Sean, how are you keeping under these lockdowns? Hope you are missing our Friday night drinks, comma, not lol. Here it goes. Revenue has been set to consistent throughout the years. I would like to bring it to your attention if you have considered any chance of the revenue to increase due to expansions which might be made on the company as demand for more products rise. If demand increases, therefore prices also increases and revenue will increase. In 2018, when demand was 50K, revenue was 3 million. But 2019, when demand was 55K, revenue was only 3.1 million. But this year, we think demand of 58K and same revenue of 3.1 million. Just think about it. It doesn't make sense. As much as I'm happy with our increasing demand, I'm worried if our delivery and logistics teams will cope with this. They are all black and could take some of our products home. How can we tighten our controls here? And guys, this is just a very short demonstration of lack of competence or not being able to demonstrate some of the competencies, or what I call killing some of those competencies, or negatively demonstrating that you are not able to demonstrate the competencies. And I actually want you guys to just take a few seconds. I mean, just throw them into the chat box. What competencies do you see lacking from this this email? Or what are the areas? Or just keep them short. Don't write paragraphs. Just indicate with 3-letter words, or like with 3 words phrases to indicate exactly what's wrong with this email or what you're not finding comfortable with the email. There is a lot. I said 6, but there's quite a lot. And I'm gonna start checking if there is anything. To me, are you seeing anything on your end from a chat perspective?
No, nothing yet from my end, Ferdy. I'll wait for the the question and answer box.
Okay, I already see one.
Says not professional opening, chulu or kulu, informal language using SMS or text language, lack of professionalism, business writing not achieved, could have used tables for the revenue, unprofessional tone, confusing correspondence, SMS writing. Yonela says professionalism. Another one says lacks professionalism. The tone isn't professional, so they're picking up a lot on the the unprofessional nature. On the
professionalism.
Yes.
Come with something different. We got the
says racism.
Yeah, keep going to me.
Confusing correspondence. Rosebud says, discriminatory tone from Rosebud. But yeah, Melisha said racism, discriminatory tone.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you, Tumi. And I think those are some, but there is quite a lot more that you can pick from here.
Increase in price with demand, technical competence from Ellison.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to me, that I want to pick on that one specifically. That sentence about demand and price increases, there is no logic around it. So it just doesn't make sense. And when I'm talking sense, I'm talking about common sense. And it's actually quite a confusing statement. There is no clarity of expression. Okay, so it's not clear what they are trying to say. But also what makes it even more complicated, I would think when they start talking about in 2018, this is what was happening, and then in 2019 and this year, that wouldn't look nicer or make more sense if it was reflected in a table, so that we avoid losing someone in our writing. So I actually just wanted to demonstrate that your writing is key. It's one of the biggest enabling competencies that you need to make sure that you are succinct, you are precise, you've got clear logic. Think about all the responses that you're putting down, and your sentence must be well thought out before you type it out. Okay, otherwise you're going to be wasting your time. Okay, and also I like the fact that you actually identified the ethical issue in the discrimination around taking some of the products home. It can be tantamount to accusing people of stealing, but a certain group of people without any facts. So I think those are some of the things that I call a professional suicide. Someone could not state something like that in their response. I'm going to move on. Look at example 1. During the APC assessment, one of the candidates' laptop did not accept the password. Guys, this is during the APC assessment. On the day, on the 17th of December, 2020, one of the candidates' laptop did not accept the password, and it locked the candidate out following multiple attempts of login. What do you do? What attribute, amongst others, do you need to demonstrate to be declared competent? Guys, this can happen to anyone. And here, you need to demonstrate emotional resilience. You've got to actually get yourself out of that mess. I call it a mess because, I mean, if halfway through or at the beginning or at any time on the day, you experience an issue. Maybe you are stuck in traffic for some weird reasons, you didn't wake up early, I don't know. But if you are not emotionally prepared to actually be like, laugh it off and say, you know what, this is quite a challenge, but I'm not going to focus on my panic. I'm going to actually resolve this because I know exactly why I'm in this situation, and I'm going to get myself out of the situation. The focus must be, I am going to demonstrate to those desirates, the APC markers, that I am competent. Being competent means, even when things are not going your way on the day, logistically, you are able to still deliver 100%, if not more than that, if 110%. Meaning, do not focus on the fact that, oh no, what am I going to do? I'm going to fail. I'm not going to be able to demonstrate my competence. Deal with the password. Deal with the password. Think about the password. Okay, how can I get help? How can I close this thing out? And then once you do, because why you want to deal with the password? Because you know that is the challenge that you're facing at the time, one at a time. And then next after that, you're like, right, once it's resolved, I'm here to demonstrate competence. The second example, I spent the night before going through last minute packs that were sent to me and printing out documents that I thought I would need for the exam. This is actually coming from a candidate. Spend the night. So this is the 16th of December. The candidate spent the night going through the last minute pack that were sent to me and printing out documents that I thought would need for the exam. For me, if you're still printing on the night of the 16th, there's something wrong in your planning. You did not plan properly. You needed to have stepped back and say, what is going to happen when? So over the 5 days, you need to have a timetable, and you cannot leave the printing to the last minute because anything could go wrong. And more importantly, you cannot be going through the pack that was sent to you at the last minute. Guys, you've got to draw the line in the sand at some point. Meaning, in the last few hours, I'm purposefully talking about the last few hours, you cannot be accepting new documents from your peers because they will just make you panic. Because if you see something, or if you receive a 100-page document, what are you going to do with it? It will just make you start doubting the level of research, the level of preparedness that you've gone through. So to manage your own nerves, make sure that you've got your timetable and you stick to it as to what is the last time in the 5 days that I'm willing to accept documents, research from other people to enable you to go through them and make it yours. So we're going to talk about that now. So these are the questions that you were asking. How to deal with the pre-release information, okay? I would say from now until the 11th, you've got 6 days. Make sure you relax, make sure you are well rested, because the assessment of professional competence starts at 8 o'clock on the 12th. When that pre-release is released, the assessment of your competence starts. Don't think the assessment starts on the day, okay? So now make sure that you relax. Make sure that if there's anything that you wanna read, you read, but do not put yourself under a lot of pressure. The pressure is coming. For now, take a lot of time out. But also, the other thing that I would say is that keep up to date with all the recent developments, just to make sure that you are very relevant, you are very up to date. The pre-release information gets released on the 12th of December. What do? You read it to understand. Understand that pre-release. And understanding it, it's an individual task. You don't rely on your team here. You've got to read that pre-release a couple of times on your own. Make sure you understand, comprehend the information that is in the pre-release. Make sure that if there is a word in there that you are reading, you don't understand, Google it, find out, open a dictionary. Make sure you understand every single thing, meaning if at the end of dealing, when I say dealing, I'm talking about reading the pre-release information, you can actually narrate exactly what the story of that organization or individual or whatever public entity it's all about. Understand. Identify the triggers. Remember, we've got positive triggers. Those are the triggers that we say, go and do something about it. Go and do something about the positive triggers. Then there are negative triggers where we say, okay, yes, I know we're dealing with go and do something about goodwill impairment. However, don't, it doesn't say don't, but it can say something like the valuation of the goodwill has already been performed or is going to be performed by so-and-so, and you don't have to worry too much about it. So the negative triggers are the ones that says you don't have to do a lot of work on. So make sure that you list all your triggers, and I'm going to show you a table shortly. For you, you need to identify the triggers, every single trigger in the case, and come up with an action plan. And the reason I say those three things, understand, triggers, and action, are individual work, because the action is very individual dependent. What am I talking about when I say action? It might be a trigger on goodwill, and I work with goodwill on a daily basis because all the companies that I audit always have goodwill, and I'm always the auditor in charge on that, and I do the work. So my action might just not be deep research, detailed research. It might just be refreshing the area or updating my understanding of goodwill calculation. Whereas someone else who's actually a service provider at a bank and does not actually deal with goodwill on a daily basis, they need a detailed research. So you need to know what your action is for every single plan, for every single trigger, and you do exactly that. Okay, and then you perform your research. Okay, so probably after the 3, that's when you meet with your team, and then now you compare notes. You make sure that they vet your understanding, and they will start asking some questions. You'll start asking them some questions where you didn't understand some of the pre-release information, and then you guys collaborate to make sure that you fully understand. You compare notes on your triggers to make sure that, oh yes, we've got all the triggers written down. If, for instance, I've got 14 triggers, someone has got 17, where are the 3? Or the 3 might have been sub-triggers in mine, or I might have 2 sub-triggers which I've consolidated with others, but I've got 1 which I had left out. Thank you, team member, for noting it, because then now I'm going to add it on my trigger list. But the action point is different. And we're going to talk teamwork just shortly. And then research. Who performs the research? It cannot be just you, because if it's just you, you will probably not finish. But having said that, let me qualify the statement. If you're going to also rely on the team to do research on other areas, you've got to make sure that they give you the results of their research early on, not on the 16th day of reconciliation, because then you've got a lot of work. Remember, someone's research is not research yet. It's data collection. Someone's research is not research that adds to the level of preparedness. It's data collection, and research is completely different to data collection. Data collection is when you receive it from your fellow team members about the triggers that they've researched, and then now you need to start reading through it and questioning it, interrogating it, making notes on it, your own notes now, re-summarizing it to make it your own. That is research. Remember, you would have researched your own triggers, you are adding other team members' research and pulling it all together to have your own file, Then we'll say you are prepared. One other thing I want to talk about on research. When you research, team, when you research or when you rely on other people to research for you, you cannot completely rely on other people to research for you on areas that you are not competent on. So I'm an audit partner. As an audit partner, if there is an audit trigger, either I research it or I delegate it to my team, but I'm comfortable with them bringing anything, and then I will read, summarize, make notes, and make it my own research. But if there is a trigger around, let's say, tax, I don't spend a lot of time in tax, guys. If I'm going to delegate that trigger to another team member, I've got to do some light research as well, so that I'm comfortable when they give me the information that I'm able to vet it and say, no, but it's not in line with the little bit that I've read. So you cannot completely delegate research of an area that you know you're not competent in. And I can tell you we're not competent in all areas because we're quite specializing, okay? So that is what will get you to preparedness. And I think I spoke about research quite a bit. And this is my favorite table that I always say. It doesn't have to be in this format, but what are the triggers? And when we spoke about triggers, guys, you've got to also indicate or think about the area. And this goes back to that competency which I call integrated thinking. If I trigger a tax disclosure, I say there will be a tax disclosure coming through, or I would want you to assist with a tax disclosure. What have I actually triggered? Have I triggered tax as a subject? Of course. Meaning I need to know the key provisions and sections of the Income Tax Act, Value Added Tax, or all other tax acts that will actually impact the industry that we're talking about, or the company that we're talking about. Tax is definitely being triggered, but not just tax. They're talking about tax disclosure. So definitely accounting is being triggered, okay? The mere fact that we're talking tax, there could be an element of ethics, especially on tax, because they could be also going in the direction of tax avoidance and tax evasion, okay? But if they're talking about a tax disclosure, what if on the day they don't ask you to actually prepare the tax disclosure, but they ask you to audit that tax disclosure? Have you thought about auditing in that trigger? Okay, now this is the tax disclosure, but I mean, one of the disclosure is how we manage our risks. Maybe tax is one of their risks. What is the risk management strategy of this company? Are they too aggressive in applying the tax provisions around avoidance? Now it goes to ethics, but it goes to strategy. Are they implementing difficult principles? Are they getting very experienced tax professionals to come and lay out very tight tax positions, or come up with different strategies to actually avoid tax? You're thinking strategy. How could I avoid tax? Nothing wrong with that. Someone might say it's morally wrong, but someone might say, but it's legal. It's very legal. So as long as it's not tax evasion. Can you see that when I've got one trigger, I need to go and unpack different disciplines? And that is what we call integrated thinking. Then once you've got the area, then you say, what is my action plan? We spoke about the action plan. Detailed research, or just obtaining an understanding, or updating my understanding because I'm already a specialist in the field. But ultimately, the final point is that I need to be a specialist, an area subject specialist, in each and every single trigger, in each and every single one of them by the night of the 16th. Okay. I think I'm gonna pause here because this is another interesting concept, but I want to start taking some of the questions. To me, do we have any questions before I run out of time? I know there will be a Q&A at the end, but I also just want to check if there are any questions at this point.
There's one question. I'm just trying to filter out the general from the specific questions.
Yeah.
There was a general one about SAICA's interventions in terms of the declining pass rates, and I don't know if that's something you would necessarily want to speak to now, or maybe at the end when you wrap up your session, Ferdy.
Yeah.
And then a specific, okay, and then a specific one from Atara. She's asking, how do we apply, or they are asking, how do we apply cost accounting and financial management in APC? I just do not see the link between the two.
Okay.
So that's a very specific and technical question that we can ponder on.
Thank you. Of course, there is no case study that will not have financial management or management accounting, because that is actually business acumen. The mere fact that in the last 7 years that we had APC, it's been case studies around a company. It means financial management is there. So it's about business acumen. Guys, when you do the research, I spoke about researching all these technical areas, but obviously there is an industry research that you will make. And when you do an industry research, And I'm going to just quote one of my team members that helped me prepare for the session and some of our sessions, to say, what does one do when they actually are researching the industry? Some of the questions are, how does the entity make money? Guys, that is a finance question, eh? How to make money? What is the product being sold? What is the cost of that product or that service? And is there a markup? How are they making money? That is management accounting. That is costing, to be specific. Who are the customers? Okay, it sounds like I'm starting to do a SWOT analysis, am I not? Isn't that financial management? Who are the competitors? How is the competition doing? What about the ratios? What if I do ratio analysis on the financial information that is given? What trends am I able to pick up from those? What are the businesses? What are the business critical assets? What does success look like in this company? Success. Am I being profitable? Or then what is the break-even line? How many products or the level of services that I must render? Okay, what are the drivers for success? What skills are required for success? Have I read the CEO and the chairman's report of this company or related companies or competitors? Those are financial information. That is your finance. How is the company being funded? That is financial management. Okay. So this, I'm not going to discuss it, but I want you guys to pick up the issues, and during the Q&A, we can talk about it. I was in a group, this is definitely coming from one of the candidates. I was in a group of 12 people, all repeaters, as we failed the 2018 APC exam. So this is a candidate from 2019. The group consisted of trainees from audit firms, banks, and public sector entities. Guys, as I'm reading, identify good and bad things about this group. On the day of the pre-release information, we read the document and identified triggers individually in the morning. We later met as a group around 12 noon to discuss the document, triggers, key themes, industry research, etc. And divided the document into sections of group of 2 people. We were all responsible for undertaking and analyzing the whole document, but we decided that people would be champions for their sections, which meant they had to become experts for their sections. I hope this group, at the end, they all became experts in every single trigger. We met on a Sunday to discuss our findings. It might be on Monday. In your case, the 2 people presented the key issues or findings from their sections. I wonder how they presented, and we critiqued them. Our research and findings in our file proved to be useful, and my understanding of the case was good. I spent the Monday and Tuesday going through the whole document and trying to make it my own and linking key issues, trigger themes, and industry research. And guys, I want to just re-emphasize that your file is your file. And the mere fact that we're in the same group does not mean our file needs to be exactly the same. Yes, our starting point of data collection might be the same, but what lands in the file can be completely different because it depends on how I'm re-summarizing and how I'm synthesizing the information for each and every team member, which is completely different. Okay. I want to talk now information on the day. Right. One of the key issues that we find, and Desiree will talk to it, is that the information on the day must be tackled together with the background of the pre-release information. Do not think the 2 are separate. No, you've got to really take the 2 things together. As you're reading, you need to be like, but they've already told me this in the pre-release. How does what they're telling me now on the day add, subtract, deduce, or do something for the pre-release? Okay, so my response needs to take both documents into account, link the issues between different emails, different tasks, whatever the case might be, make notes, evaluate, Be quick in reading the information on the day. You cannot spend more than 60 minutes reading the information on the day because you were not going to have enough time to actually start writing your tasks. And then what are the key things that you need to make sure that you deal with around the tasks? Around the tasks, understand the task. Read the task carefully. Guys, you will have a task list, but you'll also have, over and above the task list, you will have questions being asked throughout the emails or the working papers, whatever the case might be. So make sure that you completely understand the task and it's consistent between the task list and the body of the information on the day. If you need to highlight with different colors, because some tasks have more than one questions, and I call them components of the tasks. Number them. Say in this task A, I've got 3 questions that I need to answer. And then in your response, go and lay out the 3 headings, just so that at the end you are clear that I've responded to all the components of the task. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do not respond to a component of a task, that is a professional suicide. That is definitely anti-demonstration of competence. You've got to respond to every single question of the task. So it's quite important to identify how many tasks do I have, or how many questions in the tasks do I have. Bring your pervasive skills, effective communication, technical competence, and business acumen. That will come when I summarize my discussion with this. For example, if they ask you to review a working paper or review a report or review anything, if it's a review task, first and foremost, you need to know what a good one looks like. It means that is part of your research. And I don't mean start paging through your file now. No, I'm just mean at the back of your mind, remember you are a subject area specialist now in that specific field of the trigger, that now it's become a task. You, at the back of your mind, you are professionally competent and technically competent to know what a good one looks like. So you need to start identifying issues, meaning you do a line by line review. I always say to my candidates, make sure for every line or paragraph that you read, there is at least an issue that you pick up. That's why it's called a review. No matter how perfect a working paper looks like, it can always be improved. So do a line by line review. Do not be all over the show, because you will never know when you are done. When you do a line by line review, you'll know when you get to the end. Indicate a reason why what you're saying is an issue is an issue. Okay? Meaning your critique, your critical skill now needs to come into play here. You've got to demonstrate why it's an issue, and ask yourself why 3 times. Because just read your responses, and if they still a so what, then you haven't actually gotten to the depth of the question. Okay, line by line. Once you complete a line by line and you get to the last paragraph or last sentence of the working paper or report that you're being reviewed, you need to step back and say, is there anything that I would have expected to be in this working paper or in this report that is not in the report? Meaning, what has been omitted? You do a completeness check. I'm moving on. Once you do that, you're not done. It's not the end of the task. Sit back again and say, having identified the issues that I have, will this candidate now know exactly how to go and correct them? Do they know what needs to be done? If they don't, if your review notes do not demonstrate what they need to go and do, I mean, the mere fact that you have not yet tested existence of assets in your working paper, you need to indicate that Go and test existence by physically inspecting the buildings, for instance. You are coaching and directing them. Don't just leave it by saying you did not test existence of assets because it's a requirement, because it's a high risk of material misstatement. You've identified the issue. Okay, so then what must happen? Test the existence. How? By physically inspecting the buildings. Sit back again. Have I identified lots of issues where I now start thinking, oh my word, this person who prepared this working paper, what should be the consequences? You can think training, bonuses. You can think we need to fire this person. What should be the consequences? Now you're still starting to deal with the pervasive skills, pervasive issues. And finally, give them a performance evaluation. And this is where it actually becomes quite important to say, it might be your boss that has actually given you a task to review their work. You're not going to just abruptly say, you look incompetent and I will suggest a training. Oh my word, you've just actually gotten yourself a fired ticket. So you've got to actually be very tactical and say, probably going forward, what we need to do, because I've identified a number of issues in the working paper, probably what we need to do, we need to get someone who's still fresh out of varsity to do this. I can review first and then you review last, because I know you've got a bigger picture view and you've been in the organization for quite some time. So you are actually you're demonstrating that you are not impressed with their technical competence, but you do acknowledge their strategic view and you're giving them a little bit of a compliment at the back of actually critiquing their work. And your tone is actually quite relevant. Guys, I think I'm going to stop there, hey?
Before you stop there,
yeah.
Thank you so much, Ferdy, for that. I just want to pose two more questions to you.
Yeah.
Let me just scroll down. Sorry about that.
No worries.
And I think you already answered Nomtanda's, or probably in your last two sections of your presentation, where she was asking, may you please go through the exam techniques on the aspects that, sorry, this thing keeps on jumping up every time I try and read it. I'm going to try and read it again. May you please elaborate on how we integrate, this was from Pinky, yes. Please elaborate on how we integrate the information on the day with the pre-release in answering the tasks given. And I think you did kind of seamlessly put that together. I don't know if Pinky's question has been answered about putting everything together. And just
to make re-emphasize, Pinky, you need to walk in there being a subject area specialist in every single trigger and knowing that business backwards to the extent that every new information on the day that is going to be given to you, you test it against what you already know, or you add it to what you already know. So it cannot be read in isolation. Thanks, Jimmy.
And then the next one was from Nomtanda. So I just copied and pasted it because it's a bit long, asking about the exam techniques that one needs to address when you answer the following types of questions. When they ask you to critically review information, when they ask you to explain and advise in the following matters, when they ask you to defend the company position, and lastly, when they ask you to prepare the financial information. So what kind of exam techniques do you need to be applying when you're answering those different types of questions that are worded in that manner?
Okay, I think the review one, we've already dealt with it in a great amount of detail. In respect of the preparation, you've got to actually just prepare it. It needs to look nice, well presented, and it needs to demonstrate all the technical competency levels. So if they ask you maybe to prepare a note, a financial statement note, do know what you would have walked into that assessment knowing exactly what the different elements of a note looks like. If it's a PPE note, what are the disclosure requirements of PPE in IS 16? And then you'll put it down. So you need to always, you'll walk in there with a framework of everything that can be asked to be prepared. It be a note, it be an audit report, a key audit matter, whatever the case might be. So you need to be an area subject specialist before you can prepare it. I see a couple of questions are still coming through around ethics to me. Maybe I'm just worried about stealing Desiree's time, and Desiree can also answer some of the questions. If not, I'll come back to the ethics questions at the end because I'll still be around.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Ferdy. And we're quite mindful of the time, but we just want to keep on asking those questions and listening to you really thoroughly in trying to understand the dynamics of what needs to go into, what must the mindset be like, before the pre-release, and the importance of actually understanding that your file is actually your file. And I like this overarching principle of we are trying to, you said we're unpacking different disciplines in demonstrating integrated thinking. And I think that's such an important concept to just weave through that whole concept of integrated thinking. And I really, I'm taking some notes for myself in case I've got trainees that I need to, when we interact and we engage as well in the types of, these are the conversations that need to be had quite regularly throughout the training period as well, so that when the time comes to be assessed on such competencies, you are showing that you're able to demonstrate them each and every single day. So I really appreciate your time, Ferdy. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to your answers to the other questions as well that the panelists will. Yes, we'll look forward to that. Over to you, Desiree. I understand that you also will likely be sharing your presentation on here, so I just hope that you'll be able to do that. And Khoni's saying, thank you, Ferdinand. I think the thank yous will keep coming. So okay. We've heard from the lecturer. Now we need to hear it from a marker's perspective, where everybody's probably thinking, okay, now that I've put everything down and I've articulated my thoughts, how is it that we can be assessed, and what do you look for when you are assessing somebody who's provided all their input and poured their heart and soul into the day, as to what is this competence that markers are looking for, and why are markers not deeming us as competent or not? And I think it will be some hot topics, and as Ferdy has also relayed to you, there will probably be a couple of aspects that you will likely be touching on in answering some of the questions in the chat box. But I will relay as soon as you give me a gap. But for now, I will let you carry on with the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tumi. Thank you, Ferdy, for your presentation. I really learned a lot as well. Like Tumi, I was taking notes myself in terms of just integrated thinking and what being a CA is all about. Good morning, potential APC candidates. So I'm going to be taking you through a marker's perspective. My name is Desiree Masego. I wrote my APC in 2016 and I passed first attempt, thank God. And I've spent my time in the private sector, in the Big Four firms, in the technical department, and now I'm in the public sector, also in the technical department. So yeah, I've also been doing marking, so that's me. So in terms of do's and don'ts, I've seen a question in terms of information on the day. You have to fully analyze and contextualize the information, as Ferdy did indicate that you need to link it back to the pre-release information. You need to ask yourself, why is this information being given to me? What am I supposed to do with it? And most of the time, they do introduce new information on the day, which is quite lengthy. That is not just to waste your time in reading. There is a purpose for information on the day, and you need to fully incorporate the information on the day in your responses, because that is also testing your professional competence in terms of you go to a meeting, you went there well prepared, but you get to the meeting and you find new information. You can't just ignore it and be like, sorry, I'll have to come back to you in the real world, you would be able to, but it doesn't make you look good because you always have to be competent and versatile, is already indicated. When you're looking at the required, you need to break it down and you need to respond to all matters. But it did indicate that there are components in a task. So what we see as markers is that students or candidates actually do not respond to all components. You will find that you get an email, say, from the chairman of the Audit and Risk Committee to assess the JSE monitoring reports and give feedback in terms of what is the company doing right, what is the company doing wrong, and any recommendations. Those are 3 components that you actually have to respond to. And you have to actually break it down and you need to plan it. So my suggestion, as I'm coming now to planning, you need to plan your response. You need to have context of what is the task requesting from you. You need to jot down what the audience. So in this case, I've mentioned the chairman of the audit committee. You need to think of the technical and you have to have a conclusion for all tasks. So what I did in my time when I wrote, and you can actually see it come through when a person presents their response. What I did, I would have a blank, I had 8 blank pages. I would write down context, audience, technical, conclusion for all 8 of the tasks that I anticipated for the day. Already had that in my file, so that when I look at each and every task, you can already say context. There are 3 components to this task. What are they asking me? Who is the audience? What's the tone? What's the language? What is the technical? Was it an accounting standard? Because you're already now a subject matter expert in the technical. So it's important to then put the technical. Technical is being tested, is the foundation of the APC assessment. And then you have to have a conclusion. In terms of technical, candidates do struggle with multidisciplinary tasks. So you can't just think it's just an accounting question. You need to think of the VAT consequences. You need to think of the tax consequences. You need to think, is it strategic? You need to think, is there an ethical issue? So you need to be you always need to think broader than just the glaring discipline. So you need to think beyond just accounting. You need to think beyond just costing and financial and management accounting. That's very important. Then also in technical, it's very important to apply the theory directly. And what do I mean with that? I mean, you can't just dump the theory and try not to dump the theory and then go and apply it, because most of the time candidates lose coverage and they lose depth. I will give an example. So if you were asked to give or critically review the composition of the committees of the company using the King Code, you have to state the principle. That's just an obvious theory. But then in terms of now applying the theory, for example, an audit committee should have independent non-executive directors, for example. You need to state that theory and then apply and say, this is the current composition. It's not in line with the principle and all those things. So as you go along, state the theory and then apply it. Don't just state the theory first and then go apply, because you are most likely going to lose a lot on coverage, and definitely you're going to lose on depth, which I'm going to cover later. Another thing is, please, please, please be accurate, be a technical expert in the subject matter. What we've seen as markers is, for example, there's a lease on land, a candidate will decide to go and speak about IS 16 instead of IFRS 16. That is a no-no, because just from there's no way you're going to be competent for that task. So it's very important to be accurate. And it does happen that when groups allocate sections to different people, that the person that you're entrusting with the research of that trigger might have their own views, which are in a silo, and you just come and trust that it's IS 16 without applying yourself. So it's very important to always apply yourself and own the file, as Freddie kept indicating. Then what you need to do is you need to use the appropriate format. Formats are very important. What we've seen as markers is that seems like candidates just fall back to emails all the time. There's a good day, there's a kind regards at the end, even though it's a memo. It doesn't make sense. So you need to be very cautious of what is the format that is required, because it goes back to your planning. What is the context? What's the audience? And what's the format? It's very important. You can also expect to be required to do slides. You need to figure out in the software, how can you make slides? So you need to indicate or figure out how to indicate to the marker that this is a slide and this is speaker notes, for example. So I found that candidates really struggle to present anything that is not an email. So you need to prepare yourself in the next few days, look at memos, just Google it. What is a memo? What is a report? What are slides? What's the difference between a memo and a report? What type of tone do you use, just to prepare yourself in the different formats, because we usually use emails and Excel working papers. Okay, very important. We all know, please respond to all tasks that are there. If it's 8 tasks, respond to all of them, because if you don't respond to one, then you will not be competent. That's an obvious one. Another one is try to follow the chronological order of the tasks. I'm not forcing this upon you. This is just a suggestion. From what we've seen as markers is that candidates that complete the assessment in chronological order tend to remain focused and complete the tasks within the provided time. What happens is that if you identify task 5 and it's accounting and you did expert in accounting, you tend to spend a lot of time in that task and then you forget about the other tasks. So just try and follow the chronological order, but everyone has their own preference. But just from experience, what I've seen is those that do it in chronological order do actually present or get better results. Okay. And then the don'ts. Do not dump theory. Do not dump irrelevant information. Candidates do tend to panic, especially when they're not subject matters, and then they revert to the pre-prepared responses. And there's a serious issue, that's why it's in red. Don't force pre-prepared responses into the required. Ferdy did indicate in his table that was nicely presented that you should anticipate tasks, but don't plan to pass the exam during the pre-preparation phase. As in, candidates go and prepare responses, and as a marker, I can already see that you're not responding to the required. I can see that you panicked and you just gave me a response that you already prepared. I can already pick up that you did not incorporate information on the day. So this is something that is really an issue. Try not to force those prepared responses into the required, and also don't disclose your name. Because it does happen with some people, but just try not to disclose your name. In terms of what makes a script easier to mark, the presentation is very important. Try and think of how best to present the information or your response. Think of shorter paragraphs, think of bullets, think of tables, just like in Ferdy's one of his examples, that email that we looked at, the presentation of the financial information could have been better presented in a table. When you are asked to do costing and management accounting, most likely you will be required to use Excel for calculations. Just remember to show formulas. Remember to explain your assumptions, and don't just assume that the marker will know, because you're presenting to an audience and you have to explain your thoughts. So in terms of presentation, it's very important. You have to kind of impress the marker. Be professional in how you relay your response. It's very important. And then use a professional tone and language. We suggest, or we, as we speak as markers, just suggest that you avoid using hi as a salutation in emails, because most likely your audience is not a peer. It's maybe your FM, it's the chairman of the board. So just try avoid using hi in all means. Good day, dear, just keep it there, because you're most likely not talking to your peer. And then avoid using I in formal reports. It may be appropriate to use we because you're representing maybe a department, or just don't make reference to I and we at all because it's a formal report, okay? And then again, it's easier for me as a marker to actually mark when tasks are completed in chronological order. It's very easy, but as I said, it's a preference for everyone, not that I'm forcing you to complete in chronological order. Are there any questions, Yumi, from your side?
Yes, there are. There was a question about information on the day. I'm just going to go to the question and answer box. So someone asked, regarding the information on the day, do you have a view on whether it's better to read the entire information on the day in one go, then attempt the tasks, versus reading individual documents of the information on the day and attempting the related task as you finish reading? And I don't know, Desiree, if this is about the chronological order that you've been emphasizing, but that's one of the questions from the attendees.
Okay, thank you for the question. So I would suggest that read the information on the day as a whole, just like how you would have received the pre-release information and you would have had to understand it, fully understand it and contextualize it. Do the same with the information on the day, because you might find that information in email A does push through to information in document D. So it's better to just read the information as a whole and then go to the tasks. And even going to your tasks, read all the tasks and then go and attempt the individual tasks. But it's very important to just read it as a whole. That's my suggestion. Anything else?
No, that's the only question for now. The other two questions were previous questions, and they were about how to approach an ethics task. Again, what advice would you give in answering an ethics question? And both you and Ferdy are more than welcome to answer those questions.
Okay, no, I have it later on.
Okay. The third one was also, it was also about ethics, and is it advisable that we go through the CPC King as a whole before the PRI, the pre-release? Again,
okay, please,
more technical.
Please repeat that one.
Since ethics is always going to be a requirement for APC, is it advisable that we go through the CPC and King as a whole before the PRI? I guess that's the pre-release.
Okay. I'll get to that. Thank you.
Okay, those are the questions.
Okay, then most candidates did request in the survey for me to cover what the difference between coverage and depth. Coverage is identifying the matter, and it's very important for you to identify as much as possible within the given time frame. So, excuse me. So you're just covering and you're indicating that this is the issue, this is the issue, this is the issue, this is the technical standard that is applicable. So for example, you identify that it's an accounting question, it's a financial instrument, if IFRS 9 is applicable, and that's all. So that's coverage. You've identified that it's a financial instrument. Depth is providing insights. What about it? What makes it a financial instrument? You now go into the technical framework and you now start applying the information of the case study. So you go into depth and now you provide insights. So you're not just stating, because candidates really do run out of time, and that's what makes it very challenging for candidates to then get to the depth, because they're now chasing time, or they've overspent maybe on one other task that they were more comfortable with. Then they end up just noting down issues instead of diving in and just giving insights. It's important as well to use the information on the day and go into detail. So this is when you incorporate the information on the day and the pre-release information as well, because it provides further context as to, and it shows that you actually are the technical expert, you do understand the issues, and the depth, what I would say is a person that might not be a CA should still be able to understand what you're actually saying. As Ferdy did indicate, when you list or do respond, have the so what. So that will help you go into the depth, because you're going to ask yourself, so what? Now that you've noted this, so what? That's what will help you put in more depth in your responses. And then I'm going to cover time management. Because there are no marks allocated, candidates struggle with time allocation and how much time should be allocated to each task. This is a matter of professional judgment, and it's very important to note that the tasks are at different levels of difficulty and length. So answering an accounting question most likely does not equate the same time as covering an ethics question. The ethics question might be shorter time, and then the accounting question might be longer because there are more issues there. So you need to have that professional skepticism and that professional judgment, which is being tested. That now you're not going to be told that, oh, this working paper should take you 4 hours. Maybe a manager can indicate, but you should have the professional judgment to say, no, actually there are a lot of issues for this task for me to finish in 4 hours, right? So that's what you would do practically. So it's the same that you do when you're looking at the different tasks. So what we've noted is that candidates usually answer well in the first few tasks, and then after, the responses get weaker and they become less complete. And you can just see it in the responses. There are lack of conclusions, there's theory dump, there's only noting of issues, and there's no depth. So each task deserves full attention and dedication, because you need a C, or you need a competent for all the tasks for you to pass the exam. So you can't ignore other tasks and give them less attention because you're good in financial management and you're going to spend most of your time there. You might not be in audit, but even the auditing question does require the full attention and dedication as much as financial management, for example. And then I'll touch on other matters. This is where I'll also touch on ethics. We've already covered that you should be very wary of assuming the work prepared by others in the task group. Your file is your file and you need to own it. And I've spoken to one candidate who relied on a group, and the person who was supposed to investigate and perform the research on the trigger only sent it the day before. So if you have not given yourself time to go through the triggers and you're heavily relying on someone else, it can happen that the person does not give you the research in time. So just try and be aware of all the triggers as previously mentioned, and try to assess your own needs and how much time do you, or your competence in terms of that trigger. And if you don't know anything about that trigger, then go and research it, even though it is allocated to someone else. Then you can come together later and compare with the group. My experience when I did APC, I was that person that just went and researched everything myself. It was a lot of work, but I, at that time, did not want to rely on other people. It was possible, it did happen, but we're all different. It took long hours and quite strenuous, but that's what you did do. But at the end of the day, I owned the file, and you should own the file as well. I'm going to talk to an approach for a question you did not prepare for. Hopefully you don't get to this point. Please try to be prepared for everything. But what's important for you is that you just need to take a step back, understand the issue, identify the applicable technical guidance. Is it accounting? Is it tax? Is it finance? Understand what the technical guidance is trying to achieve, and then go back to planning, your context, your audience, your technical, and your conclusion. But what's very important is don't freak out. Have a plan. Just step back, understand the issue, and you passed ITC, so you most likely have the technical competence. And then understand what the technical guidance or the accounting standard is trying to achieve, and then plan. Planning your response is very important because you don't want to be all over the place. And then in terms of e-writing tips, be comfortable with the software, be mentally prepared for possible technical challenges, have confidence in your typing ability. You work every day with the laptop, so don't panic now and just lose confidence. You are competent, and just keep telling yourself that I will type fast. And remember, we don't mark English. But in terms of professionalism, avoiding spelling errors and grammar errors is good, but don't focus too much on the English and instead of responding to what is required, okay? And then the ethics. In general, we are in a prestigious profession, so we are required to have professional values and ethical behavior. So please be ethical throughout the process, and just do the right thing, even if no one can see what you're doing. It's very important, especially with the events that are taking place with the matriculants. We don't want to find ourselves in the same stance as it has previously happened in APC, okay? And then in the exam, do not be afraid to call out something that is concerning, but it's important, the tone you use is the one that is important, right? So in terms of responding, I'll get to the responding to an ethical question. Here, I'm just giving examples where you were given information and it's noted that the company provided a government official a Mercedes-Benz. So you just go and you say, gifting a government official with the Mercedes-Benz is unusual and could be seen as a bribe or corruption. You don't go and say, oh no, that's wrong. You know, this person who did it should be fired. You're not at that level yet to make executive decisions, but don't be afraid to bring it to the attention of the audience. And then another example is the intentional misappropriation of assets could be seen as fraud. So here I'm just trying to indicate the appropriate tone because some candidates come across very harshly and they almost forget that they're speaking to a financial manager, they're speaking to the CEO or the chairman of the board. So just be professional and don't be scared. And then let me respond to how do you respond to an ethics question. It's very important for you to understand the issue. So it was mentioned earlier that you need to remain relevant with the current affairs, especially now with COVID. There's a lot of corruption taking place. So the possibility of ethical questions is highly likely there because of the state of the corruption that is taking place right now. So you need to understand the issue. And the issue will most likely be triggered in the research. So without you understanding the issue, it's going to be very difficult to provide the insights. So you identify the issue, you note from maybe your research, if it was triggered in pre-release, you identify the regulation or the law that deals with that particular issue, and then you apply it and apply what the company is doing, and then appropriately say what the company should not be doing, and then you suggest how the issue can be rectified. So don't just dump it on the FM and say, this is the issue, but always try and be professional and come up with a solution. I hope that covers the question. Do you have any other question?
Yes, we've got quite a few questions, Desiree. Sorry to bombard you, but I think it's very important that we give the people what they want and the time. And I understand that we might be running a little over time before we've got our next two speakers, but I really want to give these questions a fair chance. There was a specific question for you, and then I'll move on to the others. Minal is asking, how do you know when you've given enough considerations in your solution? When do you know when to stop?
You know when to stop when the so what has been answered. Because you have to link it back to the required. So what was required of me and the information that I've given, does it actually respond to what was required? And it's very easy to go on and on and on and on and give irrelevant information. But the so what concept will really guide you in terms of linking back the information, like your response to the required. Okay, this is what was required. Have I responded? And then in my response, will another person actually understand what I'm trying to say, and they will not ask me further questions. So just apply that concept of, will a person reading this have further questions? And they shouldn't, because you've given an appropriate response and you've given depth. The problem with giving irrelevant information is that you will most likely not be able to answer the so what concept, and you will just be dumping theory. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, there's another question. There's actually quite a lot of questions that are coming in now, but I'm going to try and separate them nicely. I know Ferdy will also be jumping in. How can I better answer financial accounting triggers? Do I need to specify what the standard says and then apply that at all times? That sounds like a more technical question. Again, there's a similar one that says, do we need to make reference to specific tax act sections? And I know Ferdy was talking about the VAT and the Tax Act earlier on, so maybe he could answer that. There's a more specific one about the approach. Will I be disadvantaged if I start with my strengths? Say I start with task 8 because it's easy. Will I miss something purely because I haven't answered tasks 1 to 7? I think that's a very important question.
Okay, can we come back to that one? Let me first respond to the technical ones. So you should make reference. So I think what really drives you quoting the standards or or whatever technical guidance is driven by the audience. So if you're writing to a financial manager, for example, who has already indicated that they're not oiled up in terms of auditing standards, and the question is about audits, there you have to go actually and provide more information or more theory to support your response, because the audience has already indicated that they do not have the recent knowledge of auditing. So you have to go and give a bit more of the theory in your response. Compared to an accounting question where it's an issue about PPE and the existence of fixed assets, or maybe an impairment question. So the financial manager deals with the impairment maybe on a monthly basis. So you don't have to go quote the whole of IS 36 and give it to him and then respond, because he's closer to impairment, which is something that happens once annually, unless he requests that you provide some details. But just, you have to assess the audience. Is it a CA, a non-CA? That will then help you in identifying how much theory. In terms of the Tax Act, what I've seen is it's very difficult to respond without quoting the section. You can't just talk about there are so many tax allowances, for example. You have to quote which one you're talking about. and write it down. Maybe not obviously fully quote the whole paragraph, but you have to state which one you're talking about. But it's really, really driven by the audience, guys, how much detail you actually give. And then Tumi, can you please repeat the last one?
Was that about the tax act sections? Oh, it's about starting with the strength. So Rosebud is asking, will I be disadvantaged if I start with my strengths? So I guess the area that she's strongest in or most comfortable with. Say I start with task 8 because it's easy. Does it mean that I'm going to miss something because I haven't answered tasks 1 to 7? So this is again the sequencing and the chronological order.
You're not gonna miss anything. You just run the risk of overindulging in one task because it's your strength. It's just more of a risk that you run, but there's nothing wrong with starting with your strengths. You just need to be very strict with time and have a plan. Like, this is how much time I plan to spend on this task. And when the time is over, the time is over. You need to move on. So it's just that discipline of saying, I think it's enough now, I need to move on, because you need to complete all the tasks.
Certainly.
I've carried over some questions from the question and answer box, and thank you so much, Ferdy, for answering some of those questions in the Q&A. There's 4 more here, and I don't know if you want to just tag team them. I think those will be the last 4 that we'll be able to take before we move on to our next speakers, Desiree and Ferdy. Someone is asking, would I be penalized? And I want to answer them in chronological order. Would I be penalized if my concerns are incorrect? Desiree said, we shouldn't be afraid of voicing these concerns out, and I often avoid this in case my understanding is wrong. So which approach is better? Another one is asking about industry research. What do I need to look out for so that my industry research can be sufficient? Desiree, I think you'll like this one. What are the overall characteristics or themes that markers observe in a competent paper? And then, are there a certain amount, and this is we always get this kind of a question, are there a certain amount of C's or LC's that are required for you to pass or fail? And then what I'm just asking Ferdy, is it okay to allocate time equally to all tasks? So that's, I've just transported those into the chat box so that our panelists can see them. So I don't know how you want to tag team those, Desiree and Ferdy.
I'll pick some, and then I'll leave the difficult ones to Desiree. Okay.
Thank you.
So the first, would I be penalized if my concerns are incorrect? Trust me, you've been trained so far. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. So bring those concerns out. It's unlikely that you will be wrong with a concern. If you're concerned, there is a valid reason why you're concerned, and you document your reason why you're concerned, and we will evaluate it accordingly. Do not hold back on concerns. Second question. Yeah, I'll leave the industry research one to Desiree, because I dealt with industry research before, just to get a different perspective. Yeah, well, and then also I'll leave the characteristics and themes markers observe, Desiree, just for you. But are there certain amounts of C's and LC's that are required for you to pass or fail? All I can say, avoid LC's at all costs. Avoid LC's at all costs. It's not the BC's and the C's that are going to bring you down, but it's the LC's that are going to bring you down. Okay, so you avoid all the LC's, meaning, back to what Desiree was saying, if it says, how do you know whether you've sufficiently responded to a task? You've got to sit back at the end of each task and say, is this a competent response? Am I really proud for this to be published out there? And it is something that is coming or responding or responded by a business leader, a responsible one for that matter. And if the answer is yes, and you've answered all the so what, and you've gone through all the components of the task in terms of questions, and then there is enough depth in terms of providing us with the reasons why you've taken the approach or the route that you have, then it will be a competent outcome. But if you are doubtful and you've allocated 15 minutes to the last task, you do know that it's going to be an LC. I don't have to talk much about that. Right, is it okay to allocate time equally to all tasks? Warabile, I don't think so. Like Desiree said, there will be more tasks that are longer than others. It's just like at work. Some working papers take longer than others. And you've got to know that, let's say you took an hour to read the information on the day. You've got 7 hours, which you need to allocate to the rest of the tasks. So you'll generally have about 45 minutes to an hour, or 45 minutes to 1 hour, 15 minutes. And it's just finding a balance as to which one gets a little bit more than the other. So it's actually a professional judgment on that part. And I like how Desiree also responded to the question as to, can I start with any of the tasks? Of course, go ahead. Because by the time you start with the first task, you would have read the entire pre-release, understood it. You've read the entire IOD and you've understood it. And you've read the entire task list and you know which responses are going to go away. So yes, some will be, call it overlapping in some minor respects, but it's just the minor overlaps. And you'll know because you are actually a subject area expert in all of the components of the tasks and the task list. Desiree, do you want to take the research and the themes that the markers are observing?
Okay, not sure if this has been discussed yet, I missed it, but can you please assist with how you should approach industry research? What do I do? What do I look out for so that my industry research can be sufficient? I would say that your industry research, you first have to understand how it operates. So if it is trying to think of an industry now. If it's the airline industry, you need to understand how do they make money, as Freddie has indicated. You need to understand how money is made. You need to understand the legislation or the rules of that industry. You need to understand the topical issues. So if you type in Google, airline industry, you need to see the articles. I've found that articles actually do give you indication of what are the issues in that industry. So overall, you need to assess how does the company make money and what is done in the industry, who are the competitors, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, who are the customers. So basically, I'm just adding on to what Freddie has already indicated, and I don't have anything much to add on to that. But I don't know if that you answered, but it was covered in great detail. And then what are the overall characteristics or themes markers observe in a competent paper? I think, as I've said, the planning is important. The response, how it flows, how the response flows is very important. Having the technical accuracy is important. Having the depth is important. Covering or understanding that most tasks will be multidisciplinary. So don't just stick to accounting. Think of the VAT consequences, think of the tax consequences. So those are the characteristics or the themes that we see with competent individual and highly competent individuals. So push to cover the basic issues and then ask yourself what more can be helpful in this response, and then that's how you will move to the HC. And hopefully that's where we get. Hope everyone is planning or aspiring to be an HC. There's a question: how does one respond to audit task, be it controls or risks of material misstatement, in a very competent way? you need to understand the theory, and then you need to apply it. It's very, the risk of material misstatement question can be very tricky, but you need to articulate what the risk is, or articulate what the control is. So do not just give the theory or just say anything that, oh, sorry, for the risk of material misstatement, you also need to link it back to the assertions. And that's how you articulate what the risk is. So which assertion is being affected, or an overall financial statement issue. I know where this question is coming from, and yeah, it's a very tricky one. When they ask us to comment on an issue or a matter, how do you approach the question? Freddie, can you assist with that one?
Say that one again, Desiree. How?
When they ask us to comment on an issue or a matter, how do you approach the question?
I would actually just ask the question to clarify what question would have been asked, or like what type of a question, because that will be a very vague task to respond to. Maybe if the candidate can just go deeper into it. Any other one you want me to address, Desiree?
To me, I think
here's a general one. Can you give examples of corruption that have happened in the public domain? For example, Tongaat, Hewlett, Steinhoff, state capture. Maybe Samuel has answered himself. There's so many that could be given that point to ethical concerns. Which ones? Those have recently appeared. The Zondo Commission as well. I know. EOH, governance irregularities. There's been AO Technology Solutions as well that have been touted for previously published financial statements that contained misstatements as well. There's some that there are also great lists on the JSE's website about recently fined companies as well. But I think, even a general Google search would also assist in that. But those are quite the big ones that Samuel himself also gave us some examples. And I don't know if you guys can think of any off the top of your heads about these really big ticket items that are in the general public domain that would speak to that. And thank you for the observations from Marcus. Terrible in responding to audit tasks, grammar, not completing tasks, not demonstrating business acumen, and critical thinking. What is VBS? Is that VBS? Very basic skills.
The scandal. I was just yes.
Oh yes. VBS also quite a.
Cool. Yeah, we still here. To me, we can take other questions, but I think you can allow the other speakers.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think, I will relay them from the Q&A box or into the chat box as well as they. Now, just our last two speakers who've been there and done that and got the T-shirt as well. I'd like to introduce Ashley Arnadu, who will just be giving us a couple of minutes on her approach and what her experience was when she was writing the APC as well. Wilisha is saying thanks, Des. Ashley, over to you. Let's hear what you've got to give our candidates as well.
Thank you, Tumi. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley. As Tumi said, I was in the exact position that you guys are in a year ago. So I do understand the anxiety and the pressure, but it's all very doable. So what I would want to do, I'm just going to take you through the 5 days in terms of strategy, what my group and I's approach was. So on day one, obviously the pre-release comes out. So the agreement with my group was that we would meet at 12. So from the time that it came out up until 12, it's pretty much your time as an individual. So I would read the pre-release line by line. So the first time I read it, I'm just reading it like it's a novel, just for understanding. Okay, I take a break and then I come back again, I read. And then now I'm just trying to see what issues are jumping at me as I am reading it. And then I'll take another break, probably go and print out the pre-release. And then now I come back and I have the hard copy. Then now I'm reading line by line. Now I'm reading with intention and I want to understand and identify all the triggers. So I compile my list. At 12, I meet up with my group. So the objective in us meeting at 12 was for us to consolidate all of our triggers and we have a full list of triggers as a group. So our strategy with triggers was that we all have to do research on all of the triggers. We didn't split the triggers. Everyone has to do the work. It was a lot of work, but then I feel like it paid off because we felt like it was better to go into the exam knowing 70% of all of the triggers than to go in knowing 95% of 5 out of the 20 triggers. So that was our approach. So we did all of the work individually on all of the triggers. So after the meeting, maybe it would last maybe till 4 o'clock. From there, it's individual work. We're pushing, we're working, researching on all of the triggers. Just a point on industry research. What my approach was I would try and understand what my company is all about. Obviously, the industry, the size, and then I would also try to find a comparable company in the industry, right? I get a comparable company, and then now I'm just looking at, okay, can I get a comparable company, look at their Fs and their director's report? Because then by looking at these two things, I understand what the industry is all about. I understand what risks are there, what are the inherent risks in this industry, especially if it's in a South Africa setting. What are the issues actually happening in the industry, all based off the Fs and the director's report. I also get in whether there are any technological advancement in the industry, and all of these things. It's not that they are direct triggers or anything, but then I'll just put them in the file and then I'll just use them as like my wow factors, and I find a way to include them in my responses. So that was day one. Day two, it's still individual work. You're researching on all of the triggers. We had a Dropbox and we had pretty much a folder for all of the triggers. So whatever information you have, you just drop it in the folders, and we all had access, and we can all remotely access it, add information. And even though it was individual work, we'd still collaborate as a team. And then we also collaborated with other groups as well, just so that we had a wide pool of information.
I'm sorry, Ashley. Rosebud is observing that you sound a little bit soft. Could you turn your microphone up, maybe?
Let me try put on my headphones. That will help.
Otherwise, you could just shout at us.
Is it better now?
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, no problem. So then day three, it was the same story again. It's individual work, but then we met with my group at maybe late afternoon on day three. So now when we meet with my group, so day 3 and day 4, it's meeting with the group. So then we would pretty much find a room where there's a projector. Now we have a full list of all of our triggers. We go through the triggers one by one, and now we're presenting the research that we have found. So that whole process allowed us as well to challenge each other and debate as to, okay, why did you go in this direction? Why was this relevant to you? How come you're leaving this out? How is this relevant to the actual scenario? How can we actually apply it? So then it took a lot of time, but then that whole discussion, it helped me really understand and have a solid foundation in understanding what the triggers were about and what the underlying principle was. And I feel like that helped, especially information on the day, maybe a curveball is thrown at you. So if you have a solid foundation and you really understand what your trigger is all about in terms of the principle and what issues they are, you can pretty much find a way of responding in a competent way and still give that response that's expected for you. So that's really helped with my group. So that was day 3 and day 4. So day 4 is the same process, and then we're still going through the triggers, debating, challenging each other, and we're now compiling our file. So by the end of day 4, we all have our file. We are done. Day 5, we didn't meet. This was your individual time. So what I would do on day 5, I would give myself up until 12 o'clock, where I'm going through my file. I would be flagging my file. I would be making notes in my file. I'm making links between my triggers. Another thing that I also included in my file was just a section with all the formats, because you get nervous on the day. Some things just run away from you. So I'd have a section with all formats, be it a memo, a report, an email, things to look out for, things not to forget. So I had that as well. And how I compiled my file was per trigger. So that also helped me. And then I'd also have another section with all the other information that I found, that I felt like it would help me in giving a more detailed response, showing that I really understand the company that I've been given and the industry that it's operating in. And then the other thing that I did with my file, especially on the last day, I actually prepared for ethics. So what I did, I realized that whatever ethical dilemma that they're gonna throw at you, it's either you're dealing with a CA or you're dealing with a person in business. If you're dealing with a CA, I felt like it was easy because we have the CIPC to fall back on, and that helps you give a response that's actually showing what your basis was in saying whether something is ethical or not, or how you're advising them to take action. But then now what happens when you're dealing, it's an ethical dilemma, but the person is a person in business, they're not a CA, then what's your basis in answering and giving them advice whether something is actually ethical or not? So what I would do, I would actually go and read, you remember in first year or second year, we did ethics as a subject, and there was a section on theories on ethics. So what I would do, I would actually go and just read up on it and maybe just print out a page explaining, for example, Mill's greatest happiness theory. That would also guide me in answering the ethical question. For example, there was one of the assessment where I had to advise someone, one of my colleagues. He wasn't comfortable with the operations of the company. He felt that there was a lot of animal cruelty, so he felt like he was asking me whether he should leave the job or actually report them. So then in answering that question, the person is not a CA, so I can't quote CIPC to them. So now what do I fall back on? Because you don't want to answer from a point of judgment or just purely based on your feelings. So I would now fall back on the actual theories, because at the end of the day, ethics, it's a principle by which we live by, and those principles are based on theories. And I would actually, in that specific example, I actually answered in saying, okay, what about if you quit your job? What about your family? What about everyone who you're supporting? How is that going to work out? Now that's tailored to Mill's greatest happiness theory, because it says that a decision is actually ethical if it brings about happiness to the greatest number of people. So I just had maybe 3 or 4 theories, just with an explanation. What does it say, and how can someone actually make an ethical decision? And then that was actually my basis in answering an ethical question. So I actually had a little section just on ethics, and whatever was thrown at me with ethics, I used that as my foundation in helping me to determine and actually word out properly my response for that question. So that was the 5 days, and then from 12 o'clock I am done. I've gone through my file. I understand what's in it. I'm very familiar with everything in the from 12 o'clock is just now my time. I am relaxing. I'm mentally preparing myself for the following day, and I would only make contact with my group maybe on the actual day when we get to the venue. So that was the five days. I hope that this was helpful. And just to note, you guys, the fact that you're sitting here, the fact that you're here, it means you're more than capable. You've proven yourself over and over from the time you started in your first year. So you're more than capable. This is just a formality. So in as much as you are anxious and you're under pressure, go in there as well with excitement, because this is literally the final hurdle between you get that CA designation. With that, thank you so much to AWCA for the opportunity, and I wish you guys all the best.
Thank you so much, Ashley. And I think it's some great concepts that I find that you've outlined that are quite consistent with what Ferdinand and Desiree have been alluding to. Nompilo says that's a great example and guidance on ethics for non-CAs. Thanks, Ashley. And I think, yeah, that's very nice. It's nice that you gave those examples as well. I don't see any other questions, but I mean, before I move on to Nhyira, was there anything that you ate or you didn't eat before before the actual assessment day?
No, I didn't try out anything new. I was home. I'm not being adventurous in anything. And yeah, just hype yourself up before the exam. Believe in yourself. Do prepare the way you've always prepared for the last 6 years up until this point. So if you pray, whatever you do, just do you on that day, and make sure you rest as well, because it'll be a long day. That 8 hours, it's long, but it goes by so fast. So
fast.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Nhyira, over to you as well, and let's hear what your strategy and your insights were in the days leading up to the assessment.
So thank you so much, Dimi and the AWCA, for this opportunity. I hope you guys can hear me clearly. So as explained, my name is Nhyira Asante. I know it's spelled Nhyira, and people want to say Nhyira, but it's Nhyira. And today I was just asked to speak on just giving you guys a little bit of motivation after an unsuccessful APC attempt or failing in an exam in the prep course, and also on addressing anxiety during the preparation course or after you receive the information on the day, or just when you're feeling a bit of doubt during the whole exam process. So that's a lot to cover, and I'm just gonna switch on my timer because I know I do speak quite a bit, but I'm gonna try and help. So a little bit about my journey and my story. I first attempted the APC, in 2018, in November of 2018. On the 21st, actually, I went to look up the date because some things you just hold close to your heart and you're like, that day. So I went through the whole process, similar to what Ashley was saying and what has been advised here before. And we received the pre-release. I was very excited because I had the mentality of, this is my final exam. I'm going to do it and I'm going to conquer it and I'm going to pass. So we went through the prep process with my group. I had a really amazing group in 2018. And then we went through all the triggers. We followed all the steps that are advised here today. And then on the 21st of November, 2018, woke up early, got ready, and my dad dropped me off at the exam venue. And I was a bit early, so I was waiting for one of my friends to come through. So I sat at this coffee shop, which is right across the venue. And while I was sitting there, I was just watching the APC candidates walking in. And everyone had that big trolley. So there's this big, this big trolley that you all carry your IFSs in, and I watched everyone walk in with their IFSs, and I began to panic because I'm like, well, I brought all the textbooks that I know that I would need based on the research that I've done. So I didn't bring all my IFSs, all my ISAs, all of that. So I began to panic a little, and I'm like, why is everyone having it? In all my attempts at using the UJ prep course program, I never needed anything other than what I had in my research and the textbooks that I thought that I needed, because everything had aligned up to that moment. So I had a little bit of panic, but I told myself, you know what, calm down. I called a friend. I was like, friend, I'm losing it. Please calm me down. And she talked me off the ledge, and I said, okay, fine, it's going to be okay. Walked into the exam venue, a little bit panicked and a little bit nervous at that point. Sat down, and then the exam started. When the exam started, people started typing. I'm like, we just started. I don't understand why you're typing. So I looked around. That freaked me out a little bit again. So I went to the bathroom and I looked at myself in the mirror and I'm like, Nhyira, this is your final exam. You literally just have to pass this and then it's done. Like, you're the girl that you think you are. You can do this. It's all good. I went back to sit down, but what happened is that for 2 hours, I was stuck on one question because I began to doubt. So the way the panic set in is I began to doubt everything that I was writing and questioning myself over and over again. Is that right? Should the comma be there? And that was 2 hours straight of panic. So as you can imagine, that had a great impact on my exam results. But then at the end of the day, I finished the exam. It was, I think we finished at 5 p.m., whatever time it was. And I immediately went on my WhatsApp and I posted a status of an explosion because I'm like, yes, that was a nail-biting exam, very panicky, very triggering, but I've always believed in myself and I've always believed in my potential to achieve and succeed. Come February of 2019, I didn't get the result that I wanted, and that's putting it lightly. It was very, very traumatic for me to not have passed on the first attempt. And I'll speak to what that failure did for me. So it sort of highlighted identity issues within me. It sort of highlighted insecurities and fears, and it brought up a lot of anger. So I say anger because I was really angry at Saika, because I'm like, it's not me. Like, there's no way that I could have failed. It must be whoever marked the paper. I don't know, it's something in the system. It just can't be me. And that's all to say because I had an identity issue. My identity was surrounded around being the smart girl. I'd always received top marks. I'd always like passed at things. I never really struggled with like the schooling aspect of things. So now failing this exam was very traumatic in that sense. And then there was a lot of anger as well, and insecurity and fear about having to redo this process again. I remember in 2018 saying to all of my friends, you know what, if I fail this exam, that's it, I'm done. And now you're sitting there and you're like, oh, it's one exam and I want to be a CA. So it means I have to do this again. And all that to say is that in telling you the story, I just want to share what motivated me and took me out of that place. For most of 2019, I was very, very angry because it was just so disappointing. Yeah, it was just so disappointing to not have passed the first time. And I never wanted to be that person speaking here today on the fact that I'd failed and now I passed. But anyway, now that we're here, what really helped me was thinking about a growth mindset. So I went through coaching in 2019. And what we highlighted from my coaching process was that I'm not comfortable with addressing something that I failed before. So even if I went through the UJ process prep course and let's say I got a BC on something, I would focus on all the parts where I got a C or a HC. I wouldn't go back to where there was an obvious issue because I'd gotten a BC. I would instead focus on the good, not the bad. That's obviously like a good mindset to have, but in an exam prep and technique, you need to focus on your areas of weakness, because what you've got a C on or what you've got a HC on, that means that you're good on that, you're sorted. But the areas where you need to improve are the things that you got wrong. So I needed to go back and sort of address my issues in 2018. So we did an exam review as well. And what came through was, in that moment of panic, that 2 hours that I spent on one question, I had managed to write about 10 pages on one question. So number one, there's like whatever marker was sitting there marking my paper must have been so angry because it's 10 pages on one question. No one wants to sit and read 10 pages on one question. But also the panic led to self-doubt. And you can just see that, you could see that throughout my exam script, that as much as this person wants to pass, they aren't really sure what they're talking about. They're literally just putting information on the page to get through the fact that there's something on the page, which means that the marker must mark it, and some way the marker must make sense that this will be a competent answer and solution, and then getting to pass. So I needed to sort of unpack a growth mindset. And I don't know how many of you are interested in like cognitive behavioral techniques and that type of thing, but probably look up a growth mindset. And a growth mindset is just to say that when you get something wrong, it doesn't mean no, it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you're not smart enough. All it means is a not yet. So you don't look at it as the end of the road, but just you need to pivot and you need to make a change. And that's also something that, you know, was highlighted to me when I had to go through this whole APC program again. The fact that you need to have the ability to pivot. So information on the day comes and Nhyira's sitting there and she's a bit scared now, she's panicked. But as much as there's that panic and that anxiety in that moment, you need to be able to pivot. And I think Ferdinand spoke to this earlier on. Yeah, it might not come, the question might not come the way you anticipated it, but do you have the mental capacity to say, this is not what I expected, but let me see how I can make it work somehow. And for me, that is probably the most fundamental lesson that I've learned out of this APC process. You need to have the ability to pivot. And it's not just in the exam, it's in life generally. When things don't work out the way that you anticipated that they would, what do? You need to learn to pivot. I think Ferdinand also spoke to the point of emotional resilience. And that's also something that you need to have. So on that day, when you're sitting in that exam and a question hits you upside the head, it's not what you expected. It's a few breathing techniques. We also went through that with my coaching exercise time period. Breathing exercises. So you sit there for 10 seconds and you count down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, just to get your mind to focus on doing something that you are in control of. And then once you have figured out what you're in control of, once you figured out that, you know, you control your breathing, which means that you control what you're also going to write in your script, then you come back and you start to answer the question and you start to pivot whatever pre-prepared solution you had or pre-prepared thoughts you had, you start to pivot and answer what they are asking you, not what you think they're asking you, not what you want to put on the page, but what they're actually asking you. And then just a few points on anxiety during the preparation process. So I think what helped me a lot is, even in 2018, granted it didn't work out, but I went into 2019 with the same mindset of, after this exam, who do I want to be? So after this exam, admittedly, all of you, everyone sitting here wants to be a CA. But also after the exam, literally at 5 p.m. when they're like pens down or stop typing, whatever the case is, what is the vision that you have for yourself? I saw myself, okay, going on holiday with my friends or taking the next day off and just relaxing. Or I saw myself in a place where I didn't have the anxiety and the stress of the exam anymore. And I think having a vision of where you want to be once you're done really helps you while you're writing the exam to say, listen, there's a place that I need to get to. So I'm going to do what I have to do right now to get to what I want to do. And then how are you feeling after the exam? So after they say stop typing, what is the emotion that you want to have in your heart? You want to feel like you've accomplished something, that you've put your best foot forward, that you are the girl or the guy that you think you are. You want to have that sense of belief. So even having that vision while you're writing the exam, that helps with the anxiety. It helps to calm it down. It helps like to tell it to go away. And then information on the day when you receive it, like I mentioned, breathing, counting, these are all like small techniques, but they really help when you are just sort of like losing your mind. And also humming to yourself. So there's like lots of scientific research that is done about how music helps to have a calming effect on our senses. So you can hum to yourself just to start to focus again on the task at hand and not to panic and lose. And I know I think with our generation, it's been highlighted how important mental health is, but these are little techniques, especially when it comes to exam prep, that I really believe can help you. And then also while answering questions, and if you start to doubt yourself, if you start to maybe believe that you can't do it, I want you to remember everything that you've conquered to this point. It means that you had to pass the prep course. It means you had to pass the ITC. It means that you had to pass your varsity years, your high school. You've literally achieved everything that you've put ahead of you that you wanted to achieve to this moment, to the moment before the exam, which means that that exam will be the same. You need to just imagine that everything that you've conquered to date is that exam is also going to be part of it. And I think that really helped me to remember that, you know what, yes, I lost in 2018, but this is my time to shine, and this is going to be something that I've conquered. And then also what has been really highlighted as important, well, at least in my process, was backing yourself. So I explained that in my exam script. You could see the self-doubt, you could see the anxiety, you could see the panic. But if you're the type of person who has full confidence in your abilities, and to all the repeaters, I know it takes a big knock on confidence, it takes a big knock on ability to do things. But I just want to remind you that if you don't believe that you can do it, as much as, you know, we've all gathered here to give tips and advice and motivation, at the end of the day, you are the only person who can believe in yourself enough to get yourself across the line. And it was a very challenging and trying experience to get back from a place where I saw myself as one thing and then I'd failed, and then getting back to seeing myself as a confident individual who can do or who can accomplish the goals that she sets before her. So I just want to remind you to back yourself. Whatever answer that you've put on that paper, back yourself that it's right. Even if you have your doubts, just, you know, like shove the doubts away and back yourself, because you've conquered everything to date. You have prepared in those 5 days, you've prepared everything that you needed to prepare. And it means that you have every single ability. And then, yeah, so that's basically my little tidbits. Guys, I am believing on behalf of all of you that you will pass and you will do extremely well. And I hope this whole cohort is part of the pass rate, the people who passed first time or whatever second time, whatever you need. I hope you pass next year.
Thank you, Nhyira. So just 2 questions before you pop off. Someone commented, I love Nhyira's testimony because I can totally relate, and the fact that you tried again and made it gives me hope that I will do it too. Thank you for being so honest with your journey. So much wisdom. Thank you for sharing your story, Nhyira, and congrats on finally passing the exam. I relate so much to the trauma of failing the first time. The hardest part for a repeat candidate is picking yourself up and trying again. As a repeat candidate, I'm motivated by what you've shared. And we've got quite a few, there's been quite a healthy mix between first timers and repeat candidates. So this last part is just so crucial. You know, the managing of the anxiety and, you know, how you actually relate, of how, you know, when you set into panic mode, what actually went wrong, and going down that rabbit hole, but backing yourself, so important. And I really hope that everyone just takes these nuggets and runs with them. Someone asked, do you have any tips on maintaining energy throughout the 8 hours? And then the last question was, is it advisable to take breaks in between tasks on the day?
Okay, so the type of person that I am, once I know that I've got an exam, I can't do anything else. So I don't take breaks on the exam day, which is why 2018 was like a mess, because I even took a break to go to the bathroom. And I know that's not me. So I was out of character even. But the type of person I am, I sit for the 8 hours and I write throughout. But I know there are people who like need breaks and that type of thing. So I did bring sweets. I brought water. Sometimes taking a walk helps alleviate the stress, and then you begin to think more clearly. So whatever you are used to, and I think it's so important right now, even as you're prepping for that day, don't do anything sort of out of character. So if you know that you're not the person to take a break and walk away and, you know, walk around and then come back to it and be able to concentrate, don't do that. Do what has worked for you to this point. If you've passed every exam by following a certain method, please do that rather. And then how to maintain energy, or so gum works for me. And also just, I don't know, guys, I it's the stress of knowing that this is the exam that I'm sitting in front of and I need to pass it. That is my motivation, or what keeps my energy levels up. But sweets definitely help, Baraka, all of those things. So yeah.
Last question. I'm seeing all the thanks running in the chat box, and I think people are really appreciative once again of your amazing testimony and how it's very relatable. So when they see your face, this is somebody that they can actually relate to, because that story is probably their story as well. Meta asked, Nhyira, did you feel the need to change your board course the second time around? Thank you so much for the insights.
Well, no offense to anyone who's from UJ here, but I did. And I explain it in two parts. So I was angry, number one. So I was angry, and my anger led me to say, I'm not going to do exactly what I did the first time. So I was angry at the UJ prep course as well. Sorry to them if they're here. I apologize, but I was angry. So I switched over to UCT. And I think the switch over also gave me a new sort of way of looking at the exam, a new way to prep for it, because obviously the two courses are not the same. And not to say that one is better than the other, but I think I needed that change because I didn't enjoy the first experience. I didn't enjoy passing and then coming to the end and then failing. So I needed to change, and that worked for me. And I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but yeah. So I did change. That's my answer.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm going to hold these in my heart, and I hope that next year somebody else is going to be giving us, the same testimonial. Yes. Thank you so much. And again, congratulations. We take the W. We always take the W.
Thank you guys so much for the opportunity.
Okay, before I hand over to Nancy to close off, there is one question for Ferdy. Comment task. It might be an incorrect statement regarding a standard or a situation that the company is currently facing. And I think this alluded to the previous question, Ferdy, where someone had asked, what do I do if I'm asked to comment on something? And you'd ask for more context around that question. So the person is saying, well, it might be, maybe you've given an incorrect statement regarding a standard or a situation that the company is currently facing, and you're asked to comment thereon. And how do you approach that kind of an instruction to comment on something? How do you answer that? I hope that's clear enough.
Yeah, thanks to me. I think, yeah, it's still a difficult one out of context. And I think we can also give the candidates my Endunamoo email address. I'll drop it into the chat box just to get it more in context of the specific task. But maybe on a general level, when they asked you to comment, I guess the very first thing around a statement is to whether you agree or disagree with the statement, and it's actually checking the technical accuracy of the statement against a standard of some sort, and also justifying why you think it's an incorrect statement or why you support the statement as a correct statement to have been made. It's more likely that they will ask you more to comment on a statement that is incorrect, because in that case, then you are able to have a lot to say, and also justify your thought process and indicate your thought process as to how you got to the statement being incorrect or correct. Indicate what you've actually evaluated, why you are thinking of, like, do the 5 whys or the 3 whys. And the reason I say this is because it's not, at the end of the day, sometimes more about right or wrong. It's about how you walked the journey of deciding. Okay.
Great, thank you. I see Samuel is. Ferdy, will you please answer or address the examples I gave with current information in the public domain in our responses? I might have missed what you said. Was this about the sign-off, the Tongaat, the AO, the VBS? I think that was Samuel's original question about examples of companies that are plagued by corruption that are currently making headlines or in the public domain. Any other examples besides Steinhoff, besides
yeah, so Samuel, I think to me you've addressed it. And if I understand correctly, Samuel, you're just looking for a shopping list, which is generally what we don't give, because we leave it up to you to go and research those topical, scandalous issues. But I think Tumi addressed it. If you missed it, she did mention, in addition to Tongaat, Steinhoff, she mentioned VBS, EOH. What else did you mention to me?
That was EOH, AO, VBS, and Samuel's actually saying, Oh, are we allowed to mention those companies in our responses when we're providing the responses? Is it acceptable?
Absolutely. Yes, it's public information. As long as it's public information, it's not something that you pulled out of your own audit files, which you are bound by confidentiality, or your own clients, or whatever the case might be. If it's public information, it demonstrates great research to actually back it up with some of the actual topical and practical examples. So do show that. It's a higher level of application somewhere.
Okay, last question. Please don't laugh. So we always talk about long answers, but how short is a short answer? And is it a disadvantage to write a short answer as well? How long is a piece of string?
Yeah, so the string is as long as competent. So I guess if the question is a direct question, they could ask you a very direct question and say, is this ethical? Is this legal? Is this illegal? Is this, and your answer should have a yes or no, and then also with the points that back up that statement. And the points sometimes is not a long list of points. It's actually going and just saying, yeah, this is unethical, or this is a tax evasion because it's contravening this particular section of the Act. And if they do it, then it's a non-compliance with laws and regulations. And maybe me as a CA or CA to be, I've got a duty to report, and the directors would actually be contravening their fiduciary responsibilities. And there's nothing much more you could say, or maybe one other element you could try to bring into that type of a response is to say, maybe to legalize it or to regularize it, I would suggest you do this. But I mean, it's as short as it can be. So there's not, those are your typical short answers. And once you don't have anything more to say, then it's a short answer. To me?
Thanks, Ferdy. I think that's, I hope Prudence is answered on that. But we really do appreciate that. And I think I've tried my best to make sure that I've thrown all these questions at all of you guys, and I see that you've answered some of them really nicely in the chat box. So I hope whoever had been asking those questions that you answered, they had just copied and pasted and taken notes of all that valuable information that's in the chat box. Thank you so much, Ferdy, Desiree. Nancy, over to you.
Maybe
Thanks so much. Okay.
There was just one question around SAICA intervention that we left for the end.
Yes.
As a result of the lower pass rates.
Yes.
So yes, indeed, we've seen reducing pass rates, and SAICA has done a number of things. Obviously, firstly, they've spoken to all the professional program providers to say, are you adequately preparing the candidates to come through? Or are you letting candidates a bit too early, which are not ready for assessment of competence? And they've spoken to the universities. But I mean, in terms of the actions, and I'm sure all of you guys, and some of you would have been pilots of the SAICA APC academic support program that is run by Pathways, and has been rolled out or made available to all candidates, that online learning tool that actually identify your areas of weaknesses, and then you start doing more cases or training on those. I think that was a fantastic move from a SAICA point of view. And I think from a just also we will acknowledge SAICA from our side as Endunamoo to have accredited us as a first Black professional provider, just to try to also address the declining pass rates from a transformation perspective as well. So I think they're trying to do a number of things, but I guess evidence is in your hands, guys, to demonstrate whether or to show whether the efforts are actually working or not. So yeah, it will be best of luck from me. I'm sure you will bring it home.
Great, thanks so much, Ferdinand. And I guess from my side, I just wanted to just do a vote of thanks to our guests. So Ferdinand, thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate it. You know, your passion for this just shines through, and I'm sure, you know, it's just unleashed new motivation in the candidates that are on the line. So thank you so much for just giving your time to be here with us and just supporting the AWCA. I'm sure if we could, we would go the whole day with you, Ferdinand. But thank you just for offering your email address. I understand you'll share your email address, so thank you for being open to just taking more questions via email from the CA community, and just thank you for your time. Desiree, thank you as well. You know, I think your insights were excellent, very excellent, and linked so well to what Ferdinand shared. You know, Tumi and I were also chatting on the side how much things have changed, right? So it's just been an overall just an insightful session, and just thank you for your time as well. We truly appreciate it from AWCA. Ashley and Nhyira, thank you very much as well. It's so good to have those who've been, you know, who've walked through the journey come and speak, and just, you know, and I know one key takeaway from what you both said is just that mental preparation plays such a large part in you know, in just preparing for this exam. And Nhyira, I'm glad to see that you're still standing a big well done. As Tumi said, you know, I think failure is something that we can all you know, relate to. So it's great that you stood up and you kept going on, and you're able to stand here and just tell your story to everyone else. So just a big thank you to all our guests for giving up their time Saturday morning, especially just to be with the AWCA family. And then within AWCA, a big thank you to Nonku and Kathy for organizing this wonderful APC session. You know, it's been a challenge. It's been a challenging year for everyone. And we as we sat and thought, how do we do this APC preparation workshop? We're so used to being in a hall, being an interactive session, you know, face to face. But I think this has been just equally effective. And so thank you very much, Nonku and Kathy, for that. Tumi, our head of professional development, thank you very much for facilitating the session. We truly appreciate your support as always, and as well as Z from the AWCA office. Thank you so much for just organizing the technology behind it, and yeah, running the Facebook page for this particular session. So that's all from our side. I just want to wish all the APC candidates on the line and very, very good luck. And just remember mental preparation. Remember, as Ferdinand said, it's a test of whether are you ready, you know, to be a business leader, and just understand the competencies, like Ferdinand said, so that you can actually just make sure that you prepare adequately. So just a big thank you to everyone, a big good luck to everyone from my side. Tumi, I don't know if you've got any other words.
Thank you, Nancy. I think you've just summarized it all. Nothing further from me.
Great. I think then we will end the session. Thank you, everyone, and again, good luck. And we look forward to having your support in our sessions coming forward.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.